The rope around my wrist was still wet with another man's blood when the judge tied it to a frightened woman and called her my wife. A little girl hid behind the woman's patched brown skirt. Snow struck the wooden platform hard enough to sting my eyes. Below us, half the village laughed as a brass plate flashed my new soul skill for everyone to see.
Household memory, F rank. Remembers common domestic methods.
Then, the judge smiled and told us to leave Belhaven before the storm sealed the road. I had been awake in this body for less than 10 minutes. That was enough time to learn 4 things. First, I was no longer on Earth. Second, the body I now wore belonged to a condemned debt clerk named Elias Hart. Third, the woman beside me expected me to hurt her. And fourth, the village had just sent the 3 of us to a cottage that Winter was supposed to finish killing. An F-rank husband for an unlucky widow, someone called from the crowd. A fair match. More laughter followed. The woman beside me lowered her head. She was thin beneath her layered dress. Her long, dark auburn braid rested over one shoulder. Her hands were steady, even while the marriage cord trembled between us. The girl behind her could not have been older than 8. Thick, dark curls escaped from a faded blue hood. She stared at me with large hazel eyes and the clear belief that I was the next bad thing in her life. The judge struck his staff against the platform. Mara Fen, widow of the late Oren Fen, is assigned to the condemned debtor Elias Hart. The child Leora remains within the household. In return for service beyond the tax stone, the debt is delayed. Delayed, not forgiven. The judge pointed north, toward a white road disappearing between black trees. You will take the old forester's cottage. Keep the road clear. Report smoke, raiders, or beasts. You own nothing within Belhaven. You may enter the market only on open days. Mara's face changed when he said own nothing. It was a small change. Her jaw tightened. Her thumb rubbed across an old pale mark around her wrist. I knew that look. I had seen it on factory workers when a supervisor stepped too close. I had seen it on children when an angry parent reached for a belt in a hardware store aisle. I had never been good at saying the right thing, but I understood fear when I saw it. I turned my bound wrist so the cord between us hung loose. I will not touch you unless you allow it, I said. The words came out in a language I should not have known, yet they felt natural in my mouth. The new body remembered speech, even if my mind remembered earth. The judge frowned. What did you say? I told my wife the marriage cord is not permission. The square went quiet for one breath. Then someone laughed again, though less loudly. Mara studied me. Her amber brown eyes were guarded, but no longer empty. You speak as if you have a choice, the judge said. I do. The rope cut deeper into my wrist when a guard pulled me forward. The body I had received was tall and broad, but prison had stripped it thin. My ribs hurt. One eye was swollen. My hands carried old work scars that did not belong to the clerk described in the judgment. Perhaps this body had done more than move ink across paper. Or perhaps the scars had followed me. The brass skill plate flashed once more.
Household memory, F rank.
A woman in the front row covered her smile. Maybe he can remember how to sweep. I looked at the storm rolling over the northern ridge. If the broom is the only thing between us and freezing, I said, I will sweep very well. The little girl made a tiny sound, not quite a laugh, more like a breath that had forgotten to be afraid. We were given 1 handcart, 1 cracked pot, 2 blankets, a sack of oats, a small axe, and a key black with rust. The guard cut the rope from my wrist, but left the faded red marriage cord tied between Mara and me until we passed the village gate. At the gate, Mara stopped. A stone marker stood beside the road. Tax road ends, it read. Beyond this point, travel at your own risk. The guard cut the marriage cord and tossed the pieces into the snow. 2 hours to the cottage, he said, if the wind has not buried the path. He looked at Leora's thin boots and shrugged. Then he shut the gate. The wooden bar dropped into place behind us. Leora watched it as if the sound had closed the whole world. Mara pulled the handcart forward. The left wheel turned badly. Every third step it struck a frozen rut and threw the supplies against the side. I can pull it, I said. I have pulled heavier. I believe you. That seemed to surprise her more than an argument would have. I moved beside the cart instead of taking the handle from her. The road climbed almost at once. Snow gathered around our boots. Leora fell behind, then hurried to catch up, pretending she had not stumbled. After the 4th time, I crouched in front of her. May I carry you? She looked at Mara first. Mara gave a small nod. Leora looked back at me. On your back, not under your arm. That was not my plan. You are very tall. I did not know what tall people do. Mostly hit their heads. Her mouth twitched. She climbed onto my back. She weighed almost nothing. That frightened me more than the storm. We continued uphill. The cartwheel finally struck a stone and cracked along the rim. Mara closed her eyes. It was not a dramatic reaction. She simply stood in the road, while snow collected on her shoulders. "We can carry the sack," she said. "Leave the pot." "We need the pot." "The blankets then." "We need those too." "Then choose what kills us more slowly." I looked at the cart. On Earth I had repaired conveyor rollers at 3 a.m, with a wrench, wire, and words my grandmother would have disliked. A broken wheel was not the end of the world, but the road was too rough to repair it properly. We needed less rolling and more sliding. I tipped the cart onto one side. A faint golden line appeared over the wooden frame. I froze. The line vanished. "What is it?" "Nothing. Maybe something." A second line appeared. This one ran from the front handle, under the cart, and around the remaining wheel axle.
Drag, load, high. Move, rope here.
The words floated in the air, warm gold against the blue snow. Mara did not react. Only I could see them. I untied the supply rope, turned the cart bed flat, removed the broken wheel, and looped the rope where the line showed me. The remaining axle became a front runner. The wooden side dragged behind it like a crude sled. It was ugly. It also moved. The weight that had fought us now slid over the packed snow. Mara stared at the cart. "You knew how to do that?" I remembered. The skill plate had said household memory. Perhaps the crowd had been wrong about what counted as household work. Leora leaned over my shoulder to inspect the sled. "It looks terrible," she said. "It does, but it moves well." That may be the kindest thing anyone has ever said about my work. This time, she did laugh. We reached the cottage at dusk. Calling it a cottage was generous. The roof sagged in the middle. One shutter hung from a single hinge. Snow had blown through a hole beside the chimney and formed a small white hill on the floor. The door opened only after I drove my shoulder into it twice. Inside, the cold felt sharper than outside because the walls promised shelter and failed to give it. There was one room, one narrow bed, a broken table, and an old stone hearth split through the back. Soot stained the wall above it. The chimney pipe had rusted through in 3 places. Mara set the sack down. Leora slid from my back and stood near the door. Neither of them spoke. They had expected bad. This was worse. A heavy crack sounded above us. I looked up. The roof beam shifted. "Move!" I crossed the room in 2 steps, caught Leora around the waist, and threw myself sideways. The beam dropped where she had been standing. One end struck the floor hard enough to split a board. Dust and old snow burst through the room. Mara screamed Leora's name. Leora clung to my neck. Her breath came in small, sharp gasps. "I have her," I said. "She is safe." The fallen beam had not broken fully loose. It leaned from the wall toward the floor, dragging part of the roof with it. If it shifted again, the whole corner could come down. Gold lines flashed over the beam.
Load point found. Lever support ready.
I set Leora beside Mara and shoved the broken table under the beam. The legs were too weak. I split one bench plank, wedged it beneath the table, and used the axe handle as a lever. The gold line turned green when the angle was right. I pushed down. The beam lifted an inch. Mara moved without being asked. She dragged a thick log from beside the old hearth and slid it beneath the raised end. The beam settled onto the log. The roof stopped moving. For a moment, the only sound was the wind passing through the wall. Then Leora whispered, "Better than the sled." I laughed once, mostly from relief. Mara did not laugh. She knelt and checked Leora's face, hair, hands, and knees. Only when she was certain the girl was unhurt did she look at me. "You could have been crushed." "So could she." "That does not answer me." "No, it does not." Her eyes lowered to my hands. The lever had torn open the skin along my right palm. Blood ran across the axe handle. Mara took one step toward me, then stopped. "May I see?" she asked. The question was quiet. It mattered. I held out my hand. She wrapped it with a strip torn from the inner edge of her apron. Her fingers were cold, but careful. Outside, the storm struck the cottage harder. "We need heat," she said. I looked at the cracked hearth. The gold lines returned at once.
Earth design found. Local build ready. Heat loss 81%. Fix.
I stared at the words until Mara touched my sleeve. "Elias?" The village had laughed because my skill remembered common domestic methods. On Earth I had maintained industrial heaters, drying lines, sealed flues, pressure vents, and fuel systems. I had built a small rocket stove for camping, because my grandfather had called expensive equipment an insult to scrap metal. If the skill considered that household memory, then the judge had not banished a useless man, he had sent a workshop into the snow. Yes, I said to the golden prompt. The room filled with light. Simple lines spread across the hearth, floor, broken bricks, rusted metal, and clay packed between the wall stones. Red marks showed danger. The cracked hearth changed in my sight. I saw a narrow burn chamber, a rising heat path, a long bench of stone that would hold warmth after the fire died, and a sealed flue pulled through the wall instead of the broken chimney.
Missing metal pipe. Safe replacement found. Scrap tin plus clay rep. Home level 0. Recall plan active.
I turned to Mara. Do we have a hammer? She pointed at the supplies from the cart. No. Good. I was worried this might be easy. Leora sat on the bed with both blankets around her shoulders. What are you doing? She asked. Arguing with the house. Is it winning? Not for long. For the next 3 hours we worked. I pulled loose bricks from the fallen corner and cleaned away old mortar with the back of the axe. Mara mixed clay and ash in the cracked pot. She understood the right texture faster than I did. Leora sorted stones by size and took the job so seriously that she rejected one because it had a suspicious face.
Air gap. 2 fingers. Too wide. Turn brick. Seal. Crack.
The first fire smoked badly. Red lines flared around the flue joint.
Draft failed. Raise exit.
I changed the angle, added a short tin collar from a rusted bucket, and wrapped it in wet clay. The second fire drew cleanly. Flame raced through the narrow chamber with a deep rushing sound. Mara stepped back. That is too fierce. Wait. The small pile of wet wood burned hot and fast. Smoke vanished into the sealed flue. Heat traveled through the brick channel beneath the old stone bench. Then the fire went out. Mara's expression fell. We used the dry pieces for nothing. I put my hand against the stone bench. It was hot. Not warm. Hot. The heat moved slowly through the stone and into the room. The wall above the bench began to dry. Water darkened the clay joints and then faded. The air lost its biting edge. She pressed both hands against the side of the bench and gasped. It is still warm. Mara touched it next. Her eyes widened. The fire is dead. The wood burned hot enough to store the heat in the stone. We will need less fuel, and the room will stay warm longer. How much less?
Fuel use. 34% of old hearth.
I did not tell her the exact number. Not yet. About 1 bundle instead of 3. Mara looked toward the little stack of wood beside the wall. Then she looked at Leora, who had already curled against the warm stone with both blankets around her. Something inside Mara's face loosened. Not trust, not yet. But the first small knot of fear had begun to open. We ate thin oat porridge from the same cracked pot. Mara gave Leora the larger portion. I noticed and poured half of mine into Mara's bowl. She pushed it back. I am not asking, I said. You need strength to work. So do you. You are the husband. And you are hungry. She stared at me for a moment, then ate without another argument. I placed both blankets on it and moved a piece of the broken door across the floor near the entrance. Mara watched me lower myself onto the wood. You cannot sleep there. I can sleep almost anywhere. The floor is cold. I built a very good stove. That does not make the floor a bed. No, but it makes it a warm or bad decision. Leora hid a smile beneath the blanket. Mara said nothing more. She lay beside Leora with her back to me. The room stayed warm. For the first time since I had opened my eyes in this world, I believed we might still be alive at sunrise. Sometime deep in the night, I woke when a blanket settled over my shoulders. Mara stood above me in her thin sleeping shift, one hand holding the blanket's edge. Firelight from the worn stones touched the line of her cheek and the loose strands of auburn hair around her face. Her eyes met mine. This is not permission for anything else, she whispered. I know. She held my gaze for one more breath. Then she returned to the bed. The blanket smelled faintly of dried lavender. I had spent my life fixing machines that belonged to other people. That night, on a broken door in a cottage that should have killed us, I made myself a promise. Before winter ended, Mara and Leora would have more than survival. They would have a home. Sunrise came as a pale strip beneath the shutters. I woke to the smell of oats and the sound of Mara trying not to cough. The new stove had kept the room warm, but old soot still covered the walls. Melt water dripped through 2 roof holes. Our wet clothes hung from a rope above the stone bench, because there was nowhere else to put them. It was still the finest morning I had seen in this world. Leora sat cross-legged near the stove. She held her bowl with both hands and watched me as if I might disappear when she blinked. "You stayed," she said. "I was sleeping by the door. People can leave through doors." "That is true." I sat up slowly. Every muscle in my borrowed body complained. "I said I would make breakfast at sunrise." "You did not say that." I thought it very loudly. Mara turned away from the pot, but I saw the corner of her mouth rise. "Then I promise now," I said. "Tomorrow, I will help make breakfast before sunrise." Leora nodded with the serious expression of someone recording a legal agreement. After we ate, I studied the cottage in daylight. The roof needed patching, the door needed a bar, the water jar held enough for one day. Leora's left boot had a split sole. Mara's hands were red from cold water and harsh ash wash. A strip of dried meat in the cupboard had grown white mold along one edge. The problems were not separate. They fed one another. Cold made everything wet, wet wood smoked, smoke hurt lungs and spoiled cloth. Poor storage ruined food. Ruined food meant more trips into the storm. On Earth, a factory manager would have called a meeting and made 12 people discuss blame. I found a piece of charcoal and wrote 4 words on the cleanest part of the wall.
Warm. Cleaning. Water.
Mara stood beside me, with her arms folded. "What is that?" "Our plan. We do not have money for any of those things. We did not have money for the stove." "You had knowledge. Then tell me what hurts daily life most. Not what costs the most. What causes trouble every day." She looked around the room. "Smoke," she said at last. "Dirty clothes. Food that spoils. Cold water. Wet boots." I added boots beneath the others. Leora took the charcoal from my hand and carefully wrote a crooked line of letters.
Better breakfast.
Mara read it and sighed. "That is not a household emergency." "It is to me," Leora said. I drew a box around it. High priority. Mara gave me a look that should have been stern. It failed because she was trying not to smile. We spent the morning repairing the roof. Gold lines from the archive showed where the load should fall and which boards were too rotten to trust. Mara stitched a leather patch over Leora's boot, while I boiled water and used steam to soften a warped shutter peg. By noon, my fingers had gone numb. I crouched beside the outside wall, trying to tie a roof brace with hands that no longer listened. Mara came behind me and pulled at my sleeve. Inside, 1 more knot. "You cannot make a knot if you cannot feel the rope." That sounds like a challenge. It was an order. I followed her. Inside, Leora slept near the stove with her repaired boots placed neatly beside her. Mara sat on the bed and lifted the blanket. "Give me your hands." I stopped. She saw the question in my face and held the blanket open wider. "I am asking," she said. I sat beside her. Mara took both my hands beneath the blanket and pressed them between her palms. Her skin was warm from the stove. Mine hurt as feeling returned. We sat close enough that her shoulder rested against my arm. She looked down at our hands. "My first husband did not ask before touching me," she said. The room became very still. "I am sorry." People always say that, as if the words can travel backward. Her thumb moved over an old scar across my knuckle. "Why are you different?" I could have lied. I could have said I was kind by nature. I was not sure that was true. I was practical. I had seen what fear did to a home. It turned every sound into a warning. "Because I do not want anyone afraid of my footsteps," I said. Mara's fingers tightened once around mine. Then she let go and stood. "Your hands are warm now." They were, so was the rest of me. The next problem was cleaning. The village used ash water for cloth and dishes. It worked badly because every batch had a different strength. Too weak, and grease stayed. Too strong, and it burned skin. Mara kept a small jar of rendered animal fat near the cupboard. It was meant for cooking and lamp use. We could not waste it on an experiment unless the experiment worked. I remembered making basic hard soap with my grandfather during a camping phase he had described as an expensive way to smell like smoke. I understood the process. Fat reacted with alkali. The mix had to be right. The heat had to be controlled. The result needed time to cure. But rough memory was not enough when Mara's hands and Leora's skin were the test. I focused on the ash, fat, clay bowls, and boiling pot.
Earth design found. Safe hard soap. Local ash strength unknown. Test first.
Golden marks appeared over a cup, a feather, and a small potato from our food sack. The archive showed me a simple density test. It was not perfect chemistry, but it was far better than guessing. I boiled ash with water, let the liquid settle, then tested the strength by how the marked object floated. Mara watched every step. You have done this before? Something close. In your old home? I had not told her much about Earth. I still did not know how to explain electric light, steel factories, or dying beneath a failed loading arm. Yes. Was your old home rich? My country was. I was mostly tired. That answer seemed to interest her more than wealth would have. The first mix looked smooth. I stirred it with a flat wooden paddle, while the archive measured heat and thickness.
Mix, too strong.
Red lines spread across the bowl.
Add fat. 7 spoons.
I added 1 spoon at a time. The red faded to gold.
Safe, batch, ready.
We poured the thick mix into a simple wooden frame. The archive marked equal cutting lines and a safest place beside the stove for curing. Mara leaned close to smell it. It smells like fat and burnt wood. That is because it contains fat and burnt wood. She opened a small cloth pouch and added crushed winter mint and dried lavender to the next batch. The change was immediate. The harsh smell softened. I looked at her. That was not in my plan. Your plan needed help. It was the first time she teased me without fear behind it. We made a second batch together. Mara shaped the top with a curved spoon. Leora pressed a tiny leaf into one corner of each bar. When I built a cutting guide from 2 straight boards, the axe slipped against a hidden knot. The blade missed my fingers, but a sharp wood edge opened my palm where the old bandage had already loosened. Blood spotted the fresh mold. Mara caught my wrist. Sit. It is small. Sit. I sat. She cleaned the cut with boiled water and wrapped it in fresh cloth. This time her hands did not tremble. She moved closer between my knees so she could see the wound. A loose strand of auburn hair brushed my wrist. Does this hurt? She asked. Less than your expression suggests it should. You nearly put blood in the soap. A poor selling point. Do not joke. Hold still. When she finished, her fingers remained around my wrist. I looked at her hand, then at her face. May I? I asked. Her breath caught. I lifted her hand slowly and pressed my lips to her knuckles. It was not a kiss of ownership. It was thanks. Nothing more. Mara went completely still. Then color rose along her cheeks. You should not do that without warning, she said. I asked. You did not say what you were asking. That is fair. Her mouth curved. Ask better next time. She pulled her hand away, but not quickly. The first bars needed 2 days before we could test them safely. During that time, we built a drying rack above the warm stone bench and a narrow shelf in the coolest corner of the cottage. For food storage, I remembered sealed jars from the packing factory. We had no rubber rings or machined lids, but the archive found a local substitute.
Missing seal. Safe replacement found. Beeswax cloth. Clay lip.
We heated berries Mara had gathered and stored before the hard frost. I cooked them with a little honey, filled the clean jars, pressed waxed cloth under the lids, and heated the closed jars in water.
Seal failed. Reheat.
The others turned green. I placed the failed jar beside the breakfast pot. Leora pointed at it. Why is that one ours? Because it failed. Failed food tastes better? No, but we cannot sell what we cannot trust. She thought about this. Then I hope one fails every time. On the third morning, an older woman arrived at the cottage without knocking. She was short, wrapped in plum wool, and carried a carved walking stick that looked heavy enough to end arguments. 2 thick silver braids fell over her shoulders. A small silver ring shone in her nose. She examined the repaired roof, the clean flue, and the thin smoke above the cottage. Then she pushed the door open. Mara Fen, she said. I heard the judge gave you a useless husband. Mara looked at me. Tamsin Holt, this is Elias. Tamsin raised one eyebrow. I can see he is large. Is he useful? Leora answered before either of us could. He made an ugly sled, a warm wall, and soap that is not ready. Tamsin nodded. A fair report. She had brought dried herbs and 2 strips of smoked meat. Mara tried to refuse, but Tamsin placed them on the table and ignored her. Then the old woman noticed the soap bars. What is that? Hard washing soap, I said. Soap is for nobles. This is for hands, cloth, and dishes. Then it is weak. Not weak. Safe. Tamsin looked offended by the word. Give me one. It should cure longer. Mara made a shocked sound. Tamsin took a small end piece before we could stop her. We heated water. Tamsin rubbed the soap across a strip of old cloth stained with lamp grease. Thick, pale foam formed beneath her fingers. The grease lifted after 2 rinses. She washed one hand next. Then she waited. No burning. No red skin. Tamsin sniffed her fingers. Wintermint. Mara's idea, I said. Tamsin looked at Mara. Good. The man's version smelled like boiled disappointment. Leora laughed so hard she showed the gap where her front tooth was missing. Tamsin reached for 3 full bars. They are not ready, Mara said. Then reserve them. We have not set a price. Reserve them first. Become greedy later. She placed 2 small copper coins on the table. Our first sale. It was not enough to change our life. But the coins made a clean, bright sound against the wood. Mara touched them with 1 finger, as if they might vanish. I looked at the 10 bars curing beside the stove, the sealed berry jars on the shelf, and the warm room around us. The village had sent us here to disappear. Instead, our first customer had walked 2 hours through snow and demanded more. The archive flashed above the stove.
Permanent home improvements. 5. Home level 1. Material swap unlocked.
A new line of golden text appeared beneath it.
Build for home. Home can build for you.
The trader found us because his wagon tried to kill him. 5 days after Tamsin's visit, I heard a hoarse scream somewhere below the cottage. The sound cut through the morning wind. It was followed by cracking wood, a man shouting, and the long scrape of something heavy sliding over ice. I dropped the roof peg in my hand and ran. Mara was behind me before I reached the road. Leora followed in her repaired boots until Mara turned and ordered her back. I can carry rope, Leora argued. Then carry it to the road and stay beside the tree. The northern path curved around a steep ravine. A green trader's wagon had broken through the crusted snow at the bend. Its rear wheel hung over open air. 1 horse lay on its side, trapped in the harness. The other kicked wildly, dragging the wagon another finger toward the edge each time it moved. A lean man in a long green coat clung to the front rail. Blood ran from his temple into his short sandy beard. "Do not come closer," he shouted. "The road is breaking." The ice beneath the wagon cracked. Mara stopped beside me. If it falls, the horses will pull him with it. The trader tried to cut the harness with a small knife, but the wagon shifted again. 1 rear crate broke loose and vanished into the ravine. We heard it strike rock far below. I stuttered the road, trees, ropes, and wagon weight.
Load too high. Direct pull will fail. Earth design found. Hand winch.
Pull force times 6. Gold lines marked a thick pine uphill from the wagon. Another line circled the broken cart axle lying near our cottage path. A third showed the rope passing through 2 iron guide rings on the trader's frame. We had no proper pulley.
Missing pulley. Safe replacement found. Smooth axle plus iron rings plus wet grease.
Mara, I need the long rope, the broken cart axle, and the iron rings from the old door. She did not ask why. She ran. Leora, stay by that pine. If the rope moves toward you, step behind the trunk. I can pull. You will, from behind the tree. That answer satisfied her. I crawled across the road on my stomach. The ice groaned beneath me. The trader watched as if I had lost my mind. What are you doing? Making your wagon less interested in the ravine. I have 2 full crates of salt aboard. It weighs more than your cottage. Then we should not pull it like fools. He blinked at me. You say that while crawling toward it. That is fair. I reached the uphill side and drove the trader's spare wheel wedge beneath the front rim. It slowed the slide but did not stop it. The horse on the ground thrashed again. The wagon lurched. The rail slammed into my shoulder and knocked the breath from me. Mara arrived with the rope. Her face went white when she saw me beside the wagon. Elias, I am all right. You are under it. I noticed. Together we built the winch. I passed the rope around the thick pine and through the iron rings, using the smooth axle as a turning drum. The archive marked the right angle in green. Mara wrapped wet animal fat around the wood to cut friction. Leora fed the rope from behind the tree. The trader stared at the crude frame. That will not move the wagon. It does not need to move the wagon alone. It needs to make us stronger than the slope. I fixed a long wooden arm into the axle. Mara took one side, I took the other. Leora, when I say pull, take in the loose rope. Do not wrap it around your hands. She nodded. The trader cut the trapped horse free while we turned the arm. At first, nothing happened. The rope stretched, the winch frame creaked, My boots slipped against the snow. Then the golden line above the axle flashed.
Angle low. Raise left support.
Mara, hold. I kicked a flat stone beneath the left side. Green. Again. We pushed. The axle turned half a circle. The wagon moved uphill by a thumb's width. The trader stopped cutting and stared. Again, I shouted. We turned the arm. Leora pulled in the rope behind the tree. The wagon climbed another handspan. One of the iron rings bent. Red light spread across it.
Ring failure. Soon.
Faster, I said. That is not a comforting word, the trader answered. The standing horse kicked. The wagon jerked sideways. The bent ring tore loose and struck me across the forearm. Pain exploded from wrist to elbow. My arm was caught between the winch bar and the pine. I heard Mara shout. The wagon began sliding again. I could not pull my arm free without letting go of the bar. The archive marked a second breakpoint near my boot.
Rope break. Step down.
I drove my heel onto the marked loop. The rope locked against the tree. The wagon stopped with one wheel hanging in empty air. Mara grabbed the winch arm, alone. Get your arm out. I cannot until you raise it. Then tell me where. A gold line appeared across her side of the bar. Push down there, not straight, toward the tree. Mara said both feet, leaned her whole weight into the bar, and moved it just enough. I tore my arm free. The skin was already darkening. For one sick moment, I thought the bone had broken. I flexed my fingers. Painful, but possible. The trader cut the final strap. The trapped horse rolled clear. Now, I shouted. He jumped to the road and joined the winch. 3 adults turned the arm. Leora fed rope behind the pine. The crude machine groaned, but held. The wagon climbed out of the broken road, one slow circle at a time. When both rear wheels reached solid ground, the trader dropped to his knees. For several breaths, none of us spoke. Then he looked at our bent iron ring, greased axle, and rope brake. You moved a salt wagon with firewood. Very good firewood, I said. The trader began laughing. It sounded partly like relief, and partly like a man discovering that the world had become strange. Mara did not laugh. She seized my injured arm and pulled back my sleeve. The bruise had spread from my wrist almost to my elbow. A line of torn skin crossed the middle where the iron ring had struck. You said you were all right. I was busy. That is not the same thing. No. Can you move your fingers? I did. Mara pressed along the bone while I tried not to react. When she found the worst spot, my breath escaped between my teeth. Her eyes narrowed. You are not using that arm today. The wagon still has a broken wheel. The trader has another arm. The trader raised both hands. Soren Pell, trader, owner of 2 arms, 1 wounded head, and the worst wagon in Belhaven. Leora came out from behind the tree. It complains a lot. Soren looked at the wagon. Mara went still. I crouched carefully, so I was closer to Leora's height. You can call me Elias, I said. You do not have to call me anything else. Leora studied the snow between her boots. I know. Then she picked up a loose rope and carried it toward the cottage. Soren looked from her to me. Wisely, he said nothing. We brought him, the horses, and what remained of his goods uphill. The rescued wagon could not travel until its wheel was repaired. So Soren spent the afternoon in our cottage. The moment he entered, he removed his gloves and turned toward the stove. This room is warmer than the Belhaven Inn. It uses less wood too, Leora said. Soren held both hands above the stone bench. How much less? Soren's trader's face appeared for the first time. His tired eyes sharpened. He examined the flue, the brick channels, and the small firebox. Who built it? Mara looked at me. We did, I said. Soren noticed the soap curing beside the wall. What are those? Wintermint hard soap, Mara said, before I could answer. Her voice changed when she spoke of the product. It became clearer, more certain. Soren picked up an end piece. Guild soap? No guild mark, Mara said. Then it cannot be sold inside town. We live outside town. He smiled. That is not the same as being outside guild anger. Mara's shoulders tightened. I took a rag stained with wagon grease, rubbed the soap against it, and washed it in warm water. The black grease lifted into the foam. He washed his own hands next. Old road dirt came out of the lines around his nails. The soap rinsed clean. No burning followed. Then Mara opened one of the sealed berry jars. The lid released with a small pop. Soren smelled the preserve and tasted it from a wooden spoon. These berries were cooked when? Before the last hard frost, Mara said. And they did not mold? No. Soren sat at our broken table. His gaze moved from the soap to the jars, then to the stove. You saved my life with a machine made from scrap. Your house uses less wood than a city kitchen. Your soap works better than guild bars, and your berries survived winter. Leora leaned toward him. The failed jar tasted best. Soren looked at me. I will need that explained. Mara did not sit. What do you want? The warmth in the room changed. Soren heard the distrust in her voice. To buy, he said, not steal. Merchants say both with the same mouth. That is true. He removed a leather purse from inside his coat and placed it on the table. So I will make the first offer where your daughter can hear it. Leora straightened. Soren counted 12 silver pieces, then added 2 bags of salt, a roll of plain cloth, 3 iron rings, a small handsaw, and a proper hammer from his wagon stock. For all 10 soap bars and 6 sealed jars. Mara's eyes widened. It was more wealth than the cottage had contained when we arrived. I looked at Soren. Why so much? Because I know what Bellhaven innkeepers pay for bad soap and spoiled fruit. Because the northern route is closing to me one supplier at a time. And because, if I insult you after you pulled my wagon from a ravine, your wife may throw me back into it. Mara's mouth almost smiled. I held out my hand. Fair price now, fair price later. No hidden debt. Soren gripped it. Agreed. We loaded the soap and jars into one of his surviving crates. Before he closed it, Leora placed a small charcoal drawing on top. It showed a crooked house with a large flame coming from the roof. What is that? Soren asked. Our mark, she said. The house appears to be on fire. It is warm. Soren considered this. When the deal was done, I divided the silver into 2 equal piles. I pushed one toward Mara. She stared at it. What is this? Your half. You built the stove and the soap. You chose the herbs, shaped the bars, knew which berries would hold, and did half the work. I am your wife. Household money belongs to the husband. Not in this household. Her eyes lifted to mine. What should I buy? She asked. Whatever you believe we need. You do not need my permission. For one breath, Mara looked frightened again. Then she stepped around the table and put both arms around me. It happened so quickly that I did not move. Her cheek pressed against my chest. Her braid slid across my arm. I lifted my uninjured hand, but stopped before touching her back. Mara noticed. You may, she whispered. I wrapped my arm around her. She did not let go at once. Leora smiled at us from beside the stove. Soren became very interested in checking a wagon glove. When Mara finally stepped back, her cheeks were warm with color. Soren cleared his throat. I would like 50 bars in 12 days. Mara turned toward him. 50? 20 plain, 20 winter mint, 10 lavender. 10 jars, if you can seal them. I will pay the same rate per item, and bring more fat, ashwood, wax, and jars tomorrow. The archive flashed above our drying rack.
Steady income possible. Products working. 2 of 3. Family workshop condition found.
I looked at the warm cottage, the silver on the table, and Mara's hand still resting against my sleeve. The first sale had proven we could survive. The order proved something larger. We could become difficult to remove. Soren returned the next day with supplies, a repaired wagon wheel, and a brass bell from a broken-in door. For the cottage, he said. So traders do not have to shout until your terrifying wife appears. Mara took the bell. A wise investment. We had just hung it beside the door when 3 riders came up the road. The man in front wore a black fur vest over a dark red tunic. An iron badge shone on his belt. He was thick through the neck. With short, rust-red hair and a heavy mustache that seemed to carry more pride than his face could support. Mara's hand closed around the bell rope. Garrick Voss, she said. The riders stopped outside our gate. Garrick looked at Soren's wagon, the new tools, and the soap racks visible through the open door. Then he smiled. I came to collect the exile tax. There is no exile tax, Mara said. Garrick dismounted slowly. There is now. He pulled 3 wooden debt tags from his coat. Each carried a dark official stamp. Road use, smoke watch, unmarked trade, 30 silver total. If unpaid, I take tools and goods. Soren stepped closer. 30 silver is robbery. Garrick touched his badge. It is law. The archive opened over the nearest debt tag.
Measured mark found. Stamp offset. 3 lines. Date carved. Before household arrival. False copy.
I took the tag from Garrick's hand before he could pull it away. This date is from last month. Garrick's small brown eyes narrowed. The debt follows the cottage. The judge assigned us the cottage 5 days ago. The widow carried old obligations. Mara flinched. I did not answer for her. I turned the tag towards Soren. The stamp is copied crooked. The left scale arm sits lower than the right. An official press would strike both at once. Soren inspected it. His trader's eyes sharpened. He is right. Garrick's mustache moved, before the rest of his face. A condemned debtor questions my badge? I question your tag. You own nothing here. Mara does. Garrick laughed. A widow? My co-owner. The words came easily. I continued, but I looked at her, not Garrick. The soap, preserves, payment, and workshop are half hers. She decides what leaves this house. Garrick reached for the nearest crate. Mara stepped between him and the door. No, she said. The word was quiet. Garrick looked almost amused. Move. No. His hand rose. I caught his wrist. I did not squeeze hard. I did not need to. He tested my grip once and stopped smiling. Public review, I said. Bring the tags to the judge on market day. Let the village see the stamp and date. If the debt is real, we will answer it. If it is false, you lose more than your afternoon. The two riders behind him shifted in their saddles. Soren stood at my side. Tamsin had appeared on the road without anyone noticing, leaning on her carved stick. Garrick looked at the witnesses. Then he pulled his wrist free. Market day, he said. Do not hide the goods before then. He mounted and turned his horse downhill. Tamsin watched him leave. He will not wait for market day. Mara's face had gone pale, but she remained in the doorway. What will he do? Leora asked. Tamsin tapped the false tag with her walking stick. What cowards always do when daylight becomes dangerous. She looked at the dark forest and the storm clouds gathering beyond it. He will come at night. We had 12 days to fill Soren's order, and perhaps less time before Garrick returned. The archive did not let me wave a hand and create 50 bars. It did something more useful. It showed me how to make every motion repeatable. The first soap mold held 10 bars, but cutting by eye made the ends uneven. Gold lines appeared over 2 straight boards, a stop block, and a thin wire from Mara's sewing box.
Cutting jig ready. Bar size matched.
I fixed the bores at right angles and set the stop block to 1 width. After that, Mara could slide the soap loaf into place, pull the wire down, and cut 10 equal bars in less time than it took me to mark 3. The ash liquid changed from batch to batch, so the archive marked 3 wooden scoops for weak, medium, and strong mix. It also warned me when the fat was too cool or the pot too hot.
Mix safe. Pour now.
Every bar came out smooth. Mara added wintermint to 1 batch and lavender to another. Leora wrapped the cured bars in plain cloth and drew her crooked, warm house on each one. The flame still looks like the roof is burning, Soren said when he visited on the 4th day. It is memorable, Leora answered. Soren rubbed his beard. That is unfortunately true. We made the preserves at night, when the soap no longer needed the pot. The archive checked every seal. 1 lid failed, and Leora immediately placed it in the family cupboard. By the 6th day, the cottage no longer looked empty. Soap filled 2 racks near the warm wall. Clean jars stood on the cool shelf. Mara's sewing corner occupied the space beside the window. Leora had claimed a small stool near the stove and kept her charcoal drawings beneath it. My tools hung from pegs instead of lying in a pile. The room was still small. It had become ours. We also prepared for Garrick. I walked the road and studied every tree, slope, and narrow point. The archive turned the cottage grounds into a simple plan.
Entry points. 3. Warning. Needed.
I used thin cord and the brass bell Soren had given us to make alarm lines. A boot pressing the hidden line would pull a small metal tongue against the bell inside. The shutters received crossbars that dropped from 1 lever. The shed walls received a wash of clay, salt, and crushed stone that would not stop a long fire, but would keep a thrown torch from catching quickly. The road winch became part of the defense. I moved it beside the gate and fixed a folded weighted net above the narrow entrance. Material swap showed me how to make a pressure whistle from a sealed kettle lid, a bent tin tube, and a line attached to the gate. If anyone forced the gate open past a marked point, the line would pull the lid from a pot already sitting over coals. Steam would scream through the tube loud enough for Tamsin to hear from her hut down the slope. Soren stared at it during a test. That is the ugliest alarm I have ever seen. Leora nodded. Papa Elias makes ugly things that work. Mara looked at me over the soap rack. It may be his true skill. Her teasing had become dangerous. Not cruel. Dangerous in the way a warm room was dangerous when a man had spent too long outside. I wanted more of it. On the 8th evening, Mara set a stool between her knees and told me to sit. My hair had grown over my eyes. Soap smoke, roof dust, and melted snow had turned it into something close to rope. You cannot meet a traitor looking like that, she said. Soren has seen me trapped beneath a wagon. That was not permission to become worse. I sat. Mara loosened my hair with a bone comb. Her knees rested lightly against my shoulders. Every careful pass drew her fingers along my scalp. I had not realized how starved I was for simple touch. Not urgent touch, not pain, not a hurried handshake before another repair call. Care. Too short? She asked. Whatever you like. The comb stopped. It is your hair. I trust your judgment. Mara was quiet for several seconds. Then the scissors began to move. Dark strands fell onto my shoulders. Leora sat near the stove and offered advice no one had requested. Leave enough so he does not look like Garrick. I said, that may be the most important design rule in this house. When Mara finished, she brushed the cut hair from the back of my neck. Her fingertips lingered there. I turned my head enough to look up at her. She was very close. Her braid had come loose, and auburn hair fell over one shoulder in a dark wave. The warm light made her eyes look almost gold. Neither of us moved. Then Leora held up a soap wrapper. Does this flame look less like a fire? Mara pulled her hands away. No, we both said. That night, after Leora slept, Mara and I shared weak berry tea beside the stove. We wore simple sleep clothes. Her hair was unbraided. Mine felt strange and light. Our knees touched beneath the small table and remained that way. Tell me about your old home, Mara said. I watched steam rise from my cup. There were roads wider than Belhaven. Buildings taller than the Lord's Tower. Light came from wires. Machines filled food into thousands of bags in one day. Mara studied my face for any sign of a joke. And you left all of that? I died. The words came out too directly. Her hand closed around her cup. I told her about the factory arm that failed above a loading platform. A younger worker had been trapped beneath it. I pushed him clear. The arm came down before I could follow. Was someone waiting for you? Mara asked. No. No wife? No. No child? No. The stove gave a small crack as the stone cooled. Mara looked toward Leora sleeping on the bed. You have one now, she said. Then she looked back at me and seemed frightened by her own words. I mean, she lives in your household. The judge, I know what you meant. Do you? I hope I do. Her knee pressed more firmly against mine. For a while, we said nothing. The cottage was full of work. Soap racks, jars, tools, cloth, drawings, and drying herbs crowded every wall. But in that quiet hour, it did not feel crowded. It felt close. On the 12th day, we finished the order. 50 bars stood in 5 neat rows. 10 sealed jars carried copper thread around the lids. Mara had added the thread because broken seals would show at once. Leora's house and flame mark appeared on every wrapper.
Working Product 1. Heat-saving stove. Working Product 2. Safe hard soap. Working Product 3. Sealed preserve. Steady order. Pending delivery. Home, Level 2. Condition. Almost met.
Snow began falling before sunset. Not soft snow, a blizzard, the kind Tamsin had warned us about. Soren had planned to collect the order the next morning. Garrick had one final night to take it before witnesses and coin made our claim harder to erase. We ate early. I checked every line, shutter, latch, and tool. Mara watched from the doorway. You think he will come tonight? Yes, because the storm hides him. And because he believes it traps us. Her hand moved to the old scar around her wrist. I stepped close, but I did not touch her. You and Leora stay behind the stone bench, if the alarm rings. The shutters lock from one lever. The back wall has a narrow escape panel if fire reaches the roof. And you? I keep them outside. Mara's voice shook, but the word did not. You said this was our workshop, our home. Do not make me a thing you put behind a wall while you decide everything. She was right. Fear had made me control the plan too tightly. I pointed to the rear shutter. Then you control this lever. If anyone reaches the side wall, drop the crossbar. If fire enters, use the sand bucket before water. Water can spread lamp oil. And Leora? Bell rope. 3 pulls means danger. 5 means fire. Leora looked proud. What does 7 mean? Someone is pulling too many times. The wind struck the walls. We waited. For almost an hour. Nothing happened. Then the brass bell beside the door rang once. A single sharp note. Mara stood. Leora moved to the rope. I took the hammer and stepped into the dark front room. A second bell rang, then a third. 3 men, perhaps more. Shadows moved beyond the shutter cracks. A voice came through the storm. Open for the bailiff, Garrick. I stayed silent. The gate rattled. Elias Hart, the debt is due. Refusal allows seizure. Mara's hand tightened on the shutter lever. I saw the old fear return to her face. Not fear of Garrick alone. Fear of a man outside deciding that law gave him her home. I moved beside her. You decide whether this door opens, I said. Mara looked at me. Then she raised her voice. No. The gate slammed inward. The pressure line pulled. The sound was so violent that Leora covered both ears. Outside, a man cursed. Another shouted that the house was bewitched. The weighted net dropped across the gate. 2 shapes went down beneath it. I opened the front shutter just enough to see. Garrick stood beyond the net with 4 men. One carried a hooked farm blade. Another held a club. 2 struggled beneath the weighted rope. Garrick's black vest was white with snow. Burn the shed, he shouted. The 5th man threw a torch. It struck the workshop wall. Flames spread across the oil on the cloth wrapping, then reached the clay wash. The fire hissed and shrank. The man stared. I pulled the road winch lever. The gate rope tightened. The net dragged the 2 trapped raiders sideways into the fence posts. One man's shoulder struck wood with a wet crack. He screamed and stopped fighting. Garrick pointed at the side wall. Break through. The man with the hook ran around the cottage. Mara! Side lever! She pulled it. The side shutters dropped and locked. The raider struck them with the hook. Wood splintered, but held. Another torch landed on the shed roof. This one caught beneath a dry edge where the clay wash had cracked. Fire! Mara said. Leora pulled the bell rope 5 times. The bright ringing fought the storm. Mara took the sand bucket and ran to the rear opening. I caught her arm before she crossed. Wait, the hook man is outside that wall. A blade punched through the shutter. Mara froze. The hook tore downward and ripped the wooden bar from its slot. The raider came through with snow and broken wood around him. He was closer to Mara than I was. He swung the hook. I stepped between them. The curved metal entered my left shoulder and tore down across the upper arm. Pain came hot and clean. Blood struck the floor. Mara screamed my name. I trapped the wooden handle beneath my arm, pulled the raider forward, and drove my forehead into his face. His nose broke with a sharp crunch. He stumbled, but did not fall. He released the hook and reached for Mara. Something inside me went cold. I grabbed the front of his coat and drove him into the stone bench. His mouth struck the edge. Teeth and blood scattered across the worn stone. He made a wet, choking sound. I raised the hammer. Then I saw Leora. She stood beside the bell rope, frozen in place. Her eyes were not on the raider. They were on me. I remembered what Mara had said. She wanted a home where Leora never feared footsteps. That included mine. I lowered the hammer. The raider tried to move. I twisted his arm behind him, forced him face down, and tied his wrist to the iron stove bracket with the alarm cord. Stay, I said. He stayed. Outside, Garrick and the clubman cut through the net. The shed roof still burned along one corner. Mara pressed a folded cloth against my shoulder. You are bleeding. I know. I can hold this. You stop the fire. Her voice trembled, but her hands were steady. She kept pressure on the wound, while I crossed to the rear opening. Leora pulled the bell again, 3 slow times now, calling Tamsin as we had practiced. The archive marked the fire path.
Hot point, roof edge. Cut fuel below.
I used the long soap knife to slice away the dry cloth and rope beneath the burning patch. Mara threw sand across the exposed wood. The flame lost its path and shrank. A club smashed through the front door. Garrick forced his way inside. He looked at the tied raider, my blood, and the untouched product crates. For the first time, he seemed afraid. Then he saw Leora. He moved toward her. Mara stepped in front of the child. Garrick raised his club. I crossed the room before he could swing. I caught the club with my injured arm. Pain tore through my shoulder, but the blow stopped. With my right hand, I seized Garrick's belt and drove him backward through the broken doorway. We hit the snow together. He punched my cut shoulder. Then the archive flashed over the gate mechanism.
Winch, line, ready. Net reset, partial.
I rolled, kicked the loose line around Garrick's ankle, and pulled the release bar. The winch drum spun. The rope tightened and yanked his leg out from under him. Garrick fell face first into the snow. The weighted edge of the net dropped across his back and pinned both arms. The clubman rushed me from the right. Soren's brass bell rang from the road. Then a wagon lamp appeared through the storm. Soren was not alone. Tamsin walked ahead of the wagon with her carved stick. Behind her came 6 villagers, carrying lanterns, farm forks, and the judge's road watch horn. The clubman stopped. The raiders beneath the net stopped. Only Garrick continued shouting. This is lawful seizure. They attacked the bailiff. She entered the cottage, saw the false debt tags scattered from his torn coat, the stolen goods tied behind the raider's sled, and the man bound beside the stove. One of the stolen blankets carried another exile family's stitched name. Mara picked up a wooden tag. This one belongs to Hessa Vale, she said. Her children froze after someone took their winter cloth. The villagers looked at Garrick. Soren held up the crooked stamped tag. And this mark is false. Garrick struggled beneath the net. A traitor's word means nothing. Then use mine, Tamsin said. She struck his iron badge with the end of her walking stick. The badge tore from his belt and landed in the snow. The judge's watchman picked it up. Garrick's face changed when he realized the night had not hidden him. The storm continued, but the fight was over. Only then did my body understand how much blood I had lost. My knees weakened. Mara reached me before I fell. She lowered me onto the stone bench and cut my shirt away from the wound. The hook had opened a deep line across my shoulder, but it had not entered the joint. Tamsin cleaned and stitched it, while Mara held my hand. I watched Mara's face. The old fear was there. Not when she looked at the blood, when she looked at me. She had seen me drive a man's teeth into stone. She had seen the hammer raised in my hand. I wanted to explain. Instead, I asked the only question that mattered. Are you afraid of me? Leora stood beside her, wrapped in a blanket. Finally, Mara released my hand. My chest tightened. Then she placed her palm against my cheek. I was afraid, she said. For one moment. I closed my eyes. Mara guided my hand to her face and pressed it against her warm skin. But you stopped, she continued. You saw Leora, and you stopped. He hurt you. He reached for us. You still stopped. Leora moved closer. Mara looked down at her. Elias protected us. He did not hurt us. Leora nodded, though tears still shone in her eyes. I opened my uninjured arm. She came into it. Mara joined us a breath later. The three of us sat beside the first stove, while snow entered through the broken door and villagers carried Garrick away. One workshop corner had burned. A shutter was broken. Blood marked the floor. But the products remained. The evidence remained. And so did we. 3 days later, Belhaven held a public review in the same square where the village had laughed at my skill. Garrick stood without his badge. The stolen goods from 5 outskirts homes were stacked behind him. Soren showed the false stamps. Mara named the families. Tamsin named the winter deaths that followed his seizures. The judge removed the exile road toll from our household and recognized the cottage as a legal family workshop. Garrick was taken south to answer before the county clerk. No one laughed when the brass plate showed household memory again. Soren signed a 6-month order contract at the judge's table. Then he delivered the first payment in iron, flour, salt, wool, tools, and coin. When we returned home, the cottage door had been repaired by villagers before us. Someone had left fresh bread near the stove. Another person had stacked dry wood beneath the eaves. Mara stood in the middle of the room and looked around. We no longer need the marriage assignment, she said. I set the contract on the table. No, the workshop is recognized. I can earn money. Leora and I could take a room in the village. My heart beat harder than it had beneath Garrick's hook. You could. Mara looked at me. Her auburn hair was loose. Copper thread from the preserve jars was tied around her wrist. The judge tied us together without asking, she said. I do not want that to be the reason I remain. Neither do I. She stepped closer. Do you want me here when I am free to say no? Yes. The answer left me before fear could improve it. I forced myself to continue. But if your answer is no, I will help you move. Your money stays yours, the workshop stays half yours. I will not use Leora to hold you here. Mara's eyes filled. You make it very hard to speak. I have been told I am better with stoves. A wet laugh escaped her. Then she took both my hands. I choose this home, she said. I choose the work. I choose the terrible sleds and the soap clutter. From the bed, Leora said, It is warm. Mara smiled without looking away from me. And I choose you, Elias. The room became quieter than snow. Mara lifted one hand to the back of my neck. Kiss me, she whispered. This time there was no guess in the question. No debt, no judge, no cord. I bent toward her slowly enough to stop. She did not stop me. Our first kiss was warm and careful beside the stove that had saved us. Mara's fingers tightened in my hair. My hand settled at her waist. When the kiss ended, she remained close, her forehead against mine. Again, she said. So I kissed my wife again because she had asked me to. Later, after Leora fell asleep with a full stomach and one hand resting on her drawing book, Mara and I sat together beneath the same blanket she had once placed over me as a warning. Now she pulled it around both of us. The archive opened above the completed order, beside the door.
Home, Level 2. Family Workshop. Ready. Copy steps unlocked. First build. Show family the same steps.
Gold lines spread from my hands toward Mara's soap molds, Leora's wrappers, and the warm walls of our cottage. The next morning would bring larger orders, more work, and enemies with better coats than Garrick. But that night, none of it mattered. Snow covered the road beyond the taxstone. The paid order waited safely by the door. The first stove held its warmth long after the fire had gone out. Mara rested against my chest. Leora slept close enough to hear us breathe. The cottage that should have killed us had become the warmest place in Belhaven. And for the first time in either of my lives, I was not fixing someone else's home,